Enjoy the ride, pal.
So we're here at I2R with Jerry Smith, and Jerry, I know that you're a very spiritual guy, and I know that God has played a very significant role in the formation of your company. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, Keith, we've been talking today about all the successes at I2R and Kate's Control Systems, and we were just an instrument in the Lord's hands.
Wow.
Yahweh, as the Lord God, has been the total reason for all of the successes that we've had. And whether people here that work with us know how much he's involved, sometimes they don't believe in him yet. And he's working diligently in their lives to bring outcomes that are successful for our company and for them personally. So he's been all throughout the everything that we've been involved with has been the Lord God at work in our company, and we're proud of that.
If you will, share with us what sort of inspired you to do this wall.
Well, we had an opportunity to put different customers that we've done business with over the years up here and to illustrate different things, and a lot of the major companies in the country and in the world, in fact, we've been able to do business with. But the biggest thing is we wanted to depict our principles kind of behind the scenes, because they're the foundation of the successful businesses that we've done as depicted here on the wall. And as you go through, if you saw the whole thing, you would see all 12 principles behind the scenes as the foundation for successful projects and successful relationships with great companies.
Hello, good morning. It is May 25th, 2019. We are here in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, in Plano, Texas, with a friend of mine and a great leader in his own right, Jerry Smith. Jerry is majority owner of I2R, and Jerry is going to be talking with us today about leadership and about his company and about a number of the things that we've worked on collaboratively over the years. Jerry, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
My pleasure, Keith.
Well, Jerry, I'm going to start someplace that you're probably not expecting me to start this morning. I'm going to toss you a little curve here and talk to you about your principles, man. Tell me a little bit about why those principles are so special to you.
Well, back a long time ago when I knew a lot more than I found out I actually know now, about 20 years ago, I couldn't figure out why the guys were not doing what I knew they should be doing. Mm. And we all agreed. We sat in a meeting one day and said, hey, we're honest and we have integrity and we're all these things, and yet when we go out to the field, we didn't show that to the customers. So some guys that I was meeting with at the time decided that, I brought this up as a problem, and they said, are your values on the wall? And I said, no, they're not. And so they asked, how is everybody supposed to know what your values are every day? And so I said, well, they know me, and I believe in those things, and they should too. And so these wiser guys said, that's not the way it works. And so from there, we started collaborating. I collaborated with a number of people, you included, and determined that through a 6-month process to develop these principles, and then go through a process to get them on the wall, get everybody familiar with them and so forth. So the first thing we did was we developed the principles. Then we had a 2-hour meeting going over the principles. Everybody in the building was involved. Everybody, I asked very clearly, does everybody understand these? And everybody said, yes, we understand them. And the very next day I had a guy walk in and said, what do I do about this? And it was principle number 5. And so I said, yesterday didn't quite stick. And so I think I came to you and said, hey, I need to get these principles across, and I'm thinking about doing a school of some sort. And that's the brief part.
Well, I tell you what, I have seen a number of companies' principles over the years, and I think that yours are as well written as any companies I've seen. In fact, I would encourage our viewers, if they are interested in seeing what a really well-written set of principles, comprehensive but very practical. If they're interested in seeing what a well-written set of principles look like, they ought to come to the I2R website and take a look, because I know that your principles are part of that. In fact, you guys even have a video where you talk about your principles and what they mean to you. But I wanted to start there, Jerry, because I know that you're a very principled guy, and I know that that is sort of obvious as you walk around the company. So tell me about your company. Tell me a little bit about when you became involved in the direction that you took it.
Well, we were very fortunate to be introduced to Cates Control Systems way back in 1984. Cates was a little 4 or 5 man company at the time, based out of Houston, founded by Father Gordon. The accounting function was handled by Mom, Paula, and at the time they had youngest son Jack working the distribution arm,
right,
and they had oldest son Bob doing some electrical engineering and that sort of thing. We had a helper or two, and just the family was just super. You know, it was an environment that I felt drawn to. It was. The culture was, of course, the family culture, and the family culture was integrity and honesty and do unto others and all the things that are on our principle sheet now. But that really impressed me, that I had been involved in a number of companies, being a distribution manager for a couple of major companies. And I just thought that, gosh, the environment was something that was really special and had some growth.
Yeah. Well, growth is what you're all about, man. I mean, when you came into the company, and I remember meeting you in 1995, and you were at the salad bar at the Dallas City Club, and you have been all about growth ever since then. And as you began to take more responsibility inside the organization, I think that's whenever you really began to introduce and solidify these principles and really think in terms of different markets that you might go after as well, right?
Exactly.
Tell us your favorite I2R story about something that you've done for one of your many blue chip company customers.
Now there's one that puts you on the spot. We have so many. I mean, I guess one of the original ones was back when Bob Cates was part of the company before he passed away. We were helping Frito-Lay on a project out in Casa Grande, and they were switching from one technology to another technology, so the new technology was on the bleeding edge, so to speak. And not everything was known. All the details hadn't been brought to light yet. We supplied a number of adjustable frequency drives out there, and when the plant started, at the time we did this, it was not customary for people to be on site from a company like ours to help with that startup. You just plugged everything in and hit the start button. And so when they plugged everything in, hit the start button, none of these drives worked. And so that was a major problem. Of course, for a company like Frito, this was our first big job with anybody like Frito. We had, like, at the time, we might have had 12 or 13 people.
Yeah.
And so those not working would have meant, we wouldn't go any further. And so Bob Cates got in his car and went out to Casa Grande. And through working with the manufacturer, and this was bleeding edge technology, was able to get those drives running. And instead of that being a very bad thing for our company, it turned out to be a very good thing for our company.
Right. I know that they're still doing business with you today, decades later. And so that's, I think that points to a couple things. I think it points to the commitment of ownership, but I think it also points to the fact that you guys have a culture that goes back a long ways of being a very service-oriented organization. How would you describe the culture of your company?
The culture of our company actually is changing, but it's a fantastic culture, because we, through the last 15 years or so, through the Leadership Institute, have been able to at least expose all the people in our company and many vendors and many customers to our principles. And while those principles might not be absorbed by outsiders and some insiders, they actually allow them to get to know the fact that whether they believe in them or not, we believe in them, and that's the way we're going to operate. And they can be sure that when we do projects for them or with them, that they'll get our very best, and it'll be according to those principles.
Well, you mentioned the fact that the culture is changing, but I think the thing that's not changing is your core values. Do I understand that?
Absolutely right. I think the culture is changing from the standpoint of we're getting younger, and when we have the new generations coming to play, they don't do business like we baby boomers do business, and we've had to change, and they've had to acknowledge the fact that, holy cow, this company has principles and we're expected to live by them. And so we're migrating into that, and that has a lot to do with the reason I thought we were here today, and that's to talk about succession planning and how do you go through selling your company and so forth, because
Sure.
That's a big issue for baby boomers to realize that millennials are coming in and affecting the culture of your company.
So let's talk about that. You're absolutely right. We're here to talk about the succession of leadership here, and you've talked about the principles and the fact that baby boomers are coming in. Let me just ask: have the principles attracted the types of people that you would want in the company for the future?
Yes, it's a renowned yes. People. What's interesting is young guys are not getting exposed to the principles in life like we were for the most part. And when they come here and we interview them and we talk about the principles during the interview, that's the kind of thing they want, is a structure, is a line that they know, okay, well, there's the line, and if you stay inside that line, everything is really going to be
easier.
Much easier, right? And it's much easier at the job site when you go and meet people who are usually angry and they have pressures galore, and you come there and you're operating from a set of principles. The chances of success and the environment calm down so much more.
You've attracted a number of new employees. I know our experience and just seeing our observation, I should say, is that they really match your culture very nicely. And I know that that's an intentional effort on the part of your HR department and so forth to bring those sorts of people into the company. But let's talk a little bit about the succession for a moment. I know that over the years you've thought about, should I acquire companies? I've been in a number of those conversations with you. You've thought about, should I sell off different divisions of the company? You thought about, should we bring in financing? Should we bring in someone to buy us? And today you're headed in a direction that I know has to give you a lot of personal satisfaction. And so let's talk about that. What were some of the early thoughts that you had about where the succession of the company would go? And then how has that evolved over time?
Well, I tell you, that's what I was hoping we were going to talk about, and I've given that a lot of thought. It wasn't 5 to 7 years ago. My answer when you would say, when are you going to retire, which I got pretty much every week, was I'm going to die in the chair.
Yeah.
And that was my mindset back in those days, because I still felt I had the energy. I still felt that mentally I was in the game and could contribute to the success of our company. However, when my son came back to the company in roughly 5 years ago, around 2014, what he started sharing with me is that our customers and our vendors don't respond like baby boomers do. They respond differently. And I was not aware of what was going on, the changes that were going on really outside our company. And started thinking that, it is time for me to start to look for something else, or not die in the chair, go retire and do something else. So
Sure.
Plan a different way to exit the company.
Well, I can understand why action was sort of in your blood, because Jerry is a Baylor Bear receiver and was at one point streaking down the sidelines catching passes for the Bears. And Jerry also plays bass guitar, which you haven't talked about much in this particular interview. But rock and roll, football, all of that stuff is very native to you. And so I can imagine that an action orientation was exactly what you were thinking. As you've watched the new folks coming into the company and you're thinking about the thing that you want them to take with them, what would you say are the key elements that you want your new employees who are perhaps younger to radiate in the marketplace?
We want them to be the very best them they can be. And if they learn to do that and learn some of the foundational principles to do that and move on, that's fine with us. We would love to have them on the team as long as they're pursuing being the best them they can be.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. If they're what we think they are when we hire them, and then they want to exceed and excel to be the very best them that they can be, then it'll be good for them and it's good for us. It's good for our customers, good for our vendors.
Well, I've noticed that, your leadership team today is much more maybe decentralized than it was in the early days. And I know that as you turn over, control for different things, you have to have some reservations or some perhaps thoughts about, I hope that it doesn't turn out to be like this or that. What are some of the natural thoughts that go through your mind when you're thinking about turning over a company that you have largely built?
Well, first of all, it took a couple of years for Chris, my son, to prove that he not only could do his job, which at that time was sales manager, but also do the behind the scenes things that needed to be done. So he, instead of being asked to do that, he actually did it, which is even better.
Right.
And so what that told me was he was ready.
Yeah.
And he might need, and it's really cool that when he comes and says, "What do you think about something?" That's the topping on the cake, because that means a lot to the baby boomers. And even if he didn't listen to the answer, it's just fine. He asked, and I've told him that's fine as long as you ask my opinion. You don't have to take it. That's what it says in the Bible. There is wisdom in much counsel, but it doesn't say you must take that counsel. So that's just fine. And so that started over a 2-year period. That started me on a path to understand that succession was the best thing for our company.
I can remember that the first time you and I ever talked about the topic of leadership, I saw your eyes light up at the notion that every employee could be a leader in their own right. Is that still the case today here in I2R? And what do you do to maintain that sort of thought process?
Every employee is a leader. You know, who do their kids call daddy or mommy? You know, that they've got to lead. They are leaders, and once you wake that up in them and make them realize that they are leaders, regardless of whether they think they are in this company, they are. When they go talk to a customer, they're leading. They're leading our effort there. And so the biggest thing we had to do, or that we still have to do, is some of the young generation people come in at 25 and they come in and they sit down, and when we tell them they're leaders, they shake their head, and then we start pointing out areas where they are leaders, and they start, oh yeah, well that wakes up something in them, and then they realize, okay, if I'm a leader, I need to have a few principles here to operate with. And so if I lean on attitude, if I just have a good attitude, wow, that, I can be a leader. I'm already a leader. And so it just helps the ball rolling. And so Leadership Institute, I don't know if it's time to talk about that, but Leadership Institute has been a big thing in, number one, reinforcing that they're leaders. Number two, teaching them how to lead. Here's a few more tools. And this is what happens whenever you use the principles when you're in the biggest part of leadership, and that is resolving conflict.
Oh, conflict. Conflict can happen at work or it can happen at home, right?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back in just a moment to talk about conflict and how conflict resolution has a place both at home and in the office.
Here's the thing about working for a company with principles that really get followed. It's like your family. In your family, you have standards. You wouldn't treat people a different way than you want to be treated. And the same is true in a company. But you have to have the principles in place. Everybody has to understand them. Everybody has to use them. It really does work.
Working at I2R, I have become acquainted to our principles. I look at principles as the driver of our company, and not in a traditional sense, not in a budgetary or deadline or deliverable sense, more of a kind of a moral, ethical, social platform that we all are being expected to abide by, which is a very good thing, because if you're not playing by those rules, then we are not gelling as a company in terms of how we get along, how we interact, how we communicate with each other, how we communicate with our customers. That's why I think the principles are very important. I have worked for companies that have been lacking any sort of principles like that, and I can certainly see what the result is if you don't have anything like that. So I've come to appreciate those a lot.
We've all got to work. We've all got to come to work. And I want it to be a place that people enjoy coming. If you're going to spend 8-10 hours a day doing something, it might as well be a place where you like coming and you enjoy spending your time surrounded with people, right, that genuinely care for you and care for your well-being. And we're doing something to promote manufacturing and other jobs in the United States. But it's all about job creation. It's all about creating an American product, an American name, an American brand that we can stand behind, that we're proud of, and ultimately brings jobs this way.
All right, so we're back with Jerry Smith, and I was just about to ask Jerry about one of many stories that he has on how an employee has taken the leadership principles home with him. And so I know, Jerry, that you remember Bill, and you remember his wife coming to the awards ceremony. Tell us a little bit about that story, what Bill did.
Well, first of all, Bill Garrett was an exceptional, or is an exceptional engineer, now working for one of our major customers. When he was going through the Leadership Institute, he struggled with understanding different principles, but he seemed to engage in the process. Once he kind of understood what we were doing, he engaged it and he embraced it, and he took it home with him. And Bill was a guy who lived about an hour and a half's drive from our office, and he drove back and forth to home to work every day. So he was a dedicated guy, and he was a very impactful guy here at I2R. But once he graduated and passed the course, he became certified in the Leadership Institute. We have a celebration dinner at one of the steakhouses in town.
Very nice celebration dinner.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And his wife came up to me shockingly, and she said, since they have 8 kids, that she was very grateful for the Leadership Institute, that it had changed Bill's life, and that he had become a better father, a better husband, a better provider, more thoughtful. I mean, he has a great attitude. Everything that we, were trying to embrace in teaching the principles, he had taken home and had made a difference in his family. And to us, whether anyone else is touched by the Leadership Institute, that made a big difference in our lives.
As I remember that night, and I think I walked up as she was talking to you, Jerry, as I remember, she said that Bill was teaching the leadership principles to his kids in a homeschooling class. They were homeschoolers, and Bill had actually started a principles of leadership for his children. And
Wow.
he said he had 8 of them, so they're probably off doing other things now as well. I know that you have a 3-pronged strategy, Jerry, for how you guys engage your customers, and it's a way of tying together the business needs with this commitment that you have to the set of principles. Can you tell us about that?
We would try to place our principles in every project that we do, in everything, every single thing. And so what we did, we came up with everybody in that's working out there wants to do a project on time. It doesn't always happen that way, but we always try to do our projects on time. And everybody in business needs to do projects on budget. And so on time and on budget is what you hear around the industry for.
Right.
Everybody needs to do it on time, on budget, blah, blah, blah.
Got to get it done on time, got to get it done on budget.
And we added a 3rd prong to that, and we call that on principle. So we have to get our projects done on time, on budget, and on principle.
Wow.
And what we have found is many times when we have not followed the principles, and we're human, we're guilty, we're not perfect. When we've not followed the principles, funny thing is we're usually on that project not on budget and not on time. So that's been a major thing, and we work at it every day to get better at doing projects on time, on budget, and on principle.
Jerry, we've talked a lot about the principles today. If you were talking to a CEO or owner of a business who was thinking about establishing a set of principles, what would you tell them to do as it relates to picking those principles and integrating them into the company?
Well, first thing I would that I've learned over the last roughly 5 to 8 years, when people kept calling us about wanting to buy our company, is that if you have a set of principles, it makes your company more valuable.
Wow.
They actually put dollars on there, and if you have a way that you can show that you have ingrained your people in these principles over time. It's not just a seminar on a weekend once a year. That's very valuable to people who want to purchase.
Yeah.
And so I would say the first thing you need to do, if you're thinking about, even if you're thinking about a succession plan only, is you need to write down what principles you want and values that you want your company to stand for and operate under.
Sure. Jerry, when you think about the advice that you might offer to someone who's thinking about passing their company on, let's say to a member of the family, what are some of the top considerations that you would hold up as things they really want to be focused on?
Well, that's a very tough question, Keith, and it's I'm not sure I can answer it with all the respect that question deserves. But literally, you have to have confidence in the team. Not only your relative or whoever you're passing it off to, you have to have confidence in the team.
Right.
And we have been fortunate in obtaining, and some of this was Chris actually saying, hey, we need this or that or the other, which are tremendous, that he feels confidence in different people. But for me, I would say you have to have a team that and you feel confidence that can do the job, that can weather a storm. And really, if you've only seen people operate in the good times, you need to consider how they would operate in the bad times, because that's sometimes different.
Well, and I know that since the very beginning of the establishment of the Leadership Institute here, we've been talking about moments of truth. And I know that you have sat in on almost every panel that we've had over the last 15 years where we have put moments of truth, catastrophic situations in front of employees, and asked them to deal with it. What have you learned about some of your employees as you watched them grapple with 5 of these moments of truth in an hour's period of time? What have been some of your observations?
As I think back over it, what I've found is that a lot of great people crumble under the pressure of a moment of truth, and will not stand up to what they actually believe in, because they, for whatever reason, they don't want to confront someone else. And the other thing is, I've found that a lot of people that don't necessarily show or demonstrate their engagement in the principles have that firm, they have that firm stand that when you try to violate a principle, they will not stand for it. And that is the kind of thing you want to know before you get into a moment of truth, when those people work for your company.
What do you do when you find an employee, when you discover an employee who really has that grit and that courage to stand up for their principles? What do you do with that employee?
Well, we try to get him to the top as fast as we can.
Absolutely. And you've been great about creating opportunity inside your company for employees who really did have a strong set of values and were committed to the things that you have on paper. You mentioned one of your principles sort of in an offhanded way, and this is this idea of, and actually you call it the do unto others principle. When we see another team member not living up to these principles, we confront them privately, and we expect them to do the same for us. Why is that so difficult for people, and particularly for engineers?
What we see is a continual improvement in everybody. If they get certified and they believe and engage in the principles, then they get firmer and firmer to where they they can handle problems on their own. And of course, when they start handling problems on their own, we get better.
Well, Jerry, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. You have, I think, enlightened us about the importance of principles. I think that you have talked about how it creates opportunities for the company whenever your employees apply that principles with that concept of on time, on budget, on principle. You've shared with us some success stories, employees that you have seen personally develop, and then also the story of Bill, who actually began to teach his children the things that he was learning here on the job. So he took it home and made him a better husband, better father. You have prepared your company, and now they're responding well. And so we appreciate very much you taking time with us today. Anything else that you'd like to tell our viewers today?
Well, I would say that if you're an owner or thinking of getting out of the business, consider values and principles as a foundational piece of what you're passing on or selling.
Thank you, Jerry. You're a very principled guy, and it's been a pleasure to work with you for 15 years.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much.